Ferrari and the SF24 in the hands of Charles LECLERC were quickest in FP3 in Australia before qualifying starts, and the field is exceptionally close, with the top three less than a tenth of a second between them all, signalling that this weekend so far indicates that the team have their best chance of a race win this year, particularly so given the difficult nature that Albert Park poses for overtaking. A lot of emphasis has always been placed on qualifying while at the event, although having said that, LECLERC may not want to be on pole, as no driver has run from first on the grid in a very long time. But nonetheless, the SF24 looked great out on track, particularly in Sector 3, where the slow speed nature of the corners played into the characteristics of the SF24, which has a strong front end for this season. And this allowed Charles to pull an important gap to that of Max and the RB20 on their respective fastest laps, with the Red Bull team being only the fifth fastest car in the slow speed corners behind the likes of McLaren and Aston Martin. Of the almost 4/10 gap between first and second, the Dutchman loses 2/10 in turn 3 and also loses another tenth of a second at turn 13, which is the slow twisty section in Sector 3. And this leaves me with the impression that the car will be a rocket ship around the streets of Monaco when we do turn up to the event later in the year, but that's a discussion for another time. Now, how is he and his SF24 stacking up in race trim? Well, that paints an interesting story that we will unravel right now and also will unravel come this Sunday. McLaren were quickest of all over the long runs, just a tenth ahead of Ferrari, but if they can't sort out their qualifying form, that race pace counts for nothing, as they will be stuck in no man's land behind other teams such as Aston Martin, who have fantastic top line speed, as well as Mercedes, who are running a less loaded rear wing again for this weekend in comparison to others. And if this was to play out, this would leave Ferrari in pole position for the race win on current evidence, as they were lapping on average only a tenth behind that of McLaren, and will be able to utilise their pace, given that they will most likely be on the front two rows of the grid for certain, and probably with LECLERC on pole position. And as mentioned previously, with the nature of the circuit, it leans to having a good quali pace because overtaking is so difficult. So things on current data and the standings from the opening day of the third round in Melbourne look great for Ferrari and both their drivers. Now, yes, we do have to account for the likes of engine modes and how much fuel certain teams might be running or not. And as usual, Ferrari always run a detuned engine in practice sessions, and the same is now true of Red Bull. And with the team struggling to find a good balance between all the different kind of speed ranges of the corners, I think there's still more to come for them. So this picture could turn on its head come Saturday morning when we get to qualifying. But before we go any further, if you've enjoyed the content within this video, please consider subscribing, as I would greatly appreciate it, as I'm looking to grow this channel and I have a lot more content that I want to produce. And I may even be going to the Japanese Grand Prix later on in April, so I could have some really interesting content to bring you all. Right, back to the video. But away from all of this, what is it about the SF24 that is actually making them super competitive on this particular track? Well, for that we have to actually understand the Melbourne circuit and what the characteristics are that you need out of your Formula 1 car. And with this circuit, you need a mixture of these three things. You need great traction to come out of the corners cleanly. And then secondly, you need a balance between that of the slow, medium and a few high-speed corners. And then this now leaves the teams having to figure out the kind of wing levels that they want to run, particularly with the rear wing, is what I'm discussing in this portion right now. And all of the teams have gone for different levels of downforce and different levels of drag with this rear wing. And as we can see with Ferrari, they've gone for what I would call the middle of the road. They've not gone for a too high drag, too high downforce rearing setup. They've gone for essentially almost what they had in Jeddah. And this is enabling them to have good top speed, but also to have great speed through all the different corner speed ranges of the circuit. Now, if we look at the other teams, for example, like Mercedes, they're running a very skinny rear wing in comparison, and this is leaving them quite adrift of the other front runners. And away from how you set the car up, let's just actually hone in on the SF24 as a vehicle in itself. What are the characteristics that are making it good in general around these particular ranges of corners? Because as we just said, Albert Park is majority-wise a medium-speed circuit. And across all 3 weekends thus far, Ferrari have been exceptional in those. Well, for that, I think we have to dive a bit deeper into a couple of areas. One would be the front and rear suspension, and the team have made a lot of progress from last year to this year on those particular points, and let's just very briefly discuss what those are. The front suspension is another area that's had a lot of attention paid to. While the team have stuck with a pushrod layout suspension, they have made changes to the geometry for 2024 with the aim of increasing the level of anti-dive produced. As you can see from the 2 comparison shots of the cars, the upper wishbone on the SF24 has seen a dramatic change, with it now situated much higher up on the side of the chassis. This obviously has a aerodynamic benefit as well as helping with the anti-dive system. Ferrari's front ring and nose has undergone a few structural changes. One such notable change is to the nose. The nose itself is now more rounded than that of the predecessor's SF23, and it has different fixations to the main plane, which also has more of a rounded curvature in the central area. Another notable change from this year when comparing to last year is the fact that they've got rid of the slot gaps on the upper 2 elements of the front ring. Whether these return at any point in season, only time will tell. So all in all, a very positive first 2 practice sessions of the weekend here in Melbourne, and if they can continue this trend while taking into consideration and the factors such as the track ramping up for tomorrow as well, that should leave them in a very, very good position to hopefully finally mount a challenge to Red Bull this weekend, particularly if they can't get on top of the problems that they're having. And this should leave us with an exciting race ahead. Right, everyone, thank you all for watching. If you've enjoyed it, leave comments down below and I'll catch you all in another video.